if people are actually being sat down being like, if you're white, you're an oppressor and you're bad. That is not okay. That is not CRT. That is not critical race theory, and that is not culturally responsive teaching.
Yes, it is CRT.
Taught on the graduate level or the undergraduate level. So I think that it's kind of not a great term to use in reference to conversations surrounding K-12 education, because it's not actually something that's even on the docket for consideration.
That's a perfect description. I could not have done a better description.
Which is
and
yes.
She's not wrong. Yeah. She's not wrong because.
Yeah. What do you mean she's not wrong? You just said that the other girl was right.
What is CRT?
Critical race theory in reality is this complex legal institution that relates race to all of the institutions of America since its founding and since its birth. And it's something that I've never learned about in my classroom. I don't have any friends that have learned about it in their classrooms. It's something that's often...
That's a lie. That's a lie. Although you may not have learned about critical race theory, I'm talking about primary schools such as K-12, directly in your classroom, meaning it was not in the curriculum of your courses, it was definitely suggested to you in class. And the reason I'm saying this is not based off of my own biases, because it's not in any curriculum, or at least when I was in school, it wasn't in any curriculum K-12. But if you've ever been taught that white people inherently have privilege, that the system we live in is patriarchal, that black people are inherently wronged by our nation, if you were ever taught any biases towards a specific race in school, then that is critical race theory. It doesn't have to be in the curriculum exactly, or it doesn't have to be a lesson plan exactly, or I take it a step further. If the culture of your school suggests that, or even hints at it when teaching another subject in history, then that's critical race theory. It's the same thing. What is critical race theory? It's defined as, and I'm not looking at anything, I'm going off the top of my head. It's defined as a race having superiority over another race naturally in society. And that is definitely implied in K-12 education.
Taught on the graduate level or the undergraduate level. So I think that it's kind of not a great term to use in reference to conversations surrounding K-12 education, because it's not actually something that's even on the docket for consideration.
That's a perfect description. I could not have done a better description if I tried.
It is in our schools. I saw the lessons that contain critical race theory in California.
It said the words critical race.
It said the words critical race theory.
And
yes.
She's not wrong. She's not wrong because...
Wait, what do you mean she's not wrong? You just said that the other girl was right. And I'm watching this video. I don't know if critical race theory is directly in the curriculum of K-12 because I'm not in K-12. And when I was in school, I went to a STEM school. Majority of my classes were STEM oriented. They weren't, I'm not going to say we didn't learn this, because of course we learned history, but it was a STEM school. I was trying to learn. Anyways, how are you switching sides like this? You can't just say that the girl who just spoke was right, but then also say that this woman is right. What do you mean?
Some states have implemented CRT into their curriculum. It means different things for different districts. So this is about to be a very complicated conversation.
So in my district, and this is in California, they're requiring a class called ethnic studies in order to graduate. And in the class, they were taught about critical race theory. They were taught the definition. They were taught to analyze school policy through critical race theory, and they were taught how critical race theory is beneficial to analyze the U.S. It's basically like this idea that every institution in America, every institution, that interaction that you have has some sort of element of race, and usually there's a hierarchy of oppressed versus oppressor. And there are kids in America in K through 12 that are being taught that, and I'm so tired of people saying that's not happening when it is. And then when I expose
exactly, she's going off. She's going off because the first girl tried to hit that it wasn't being taught. I kind of said, my perspective, I didn't know if it was in a curriculum in K-12 because I am not K-12. I don't have any kids in K-12, or any siblings or anything. So I didn't know, but I did say that it is implied, because if you're learning, or if a teacher even suggests that America is systemically racist, then that is critical race theory. It doesn't matter if it's in the curriculum, but I digress. But this lady said, well, it literally is in the curriculum and you just made that up. And this guy is jumping sides mid-discussion.
it, I'm being called racial slurs and names for exposing it. And I'm like, come on, guys. Like, so I think we need to stop saying it's not being taught in America and change it to should it be taught in America? Because it is. It is. There are teachers that are teaching this.
So there's a recent bill that was passed in Texas called Senate Bill 3, and it completely revamped Texas's curriculum standards and basically eliminated all requirements for teaching of history education in Texas that relate to diverse perspectives. So teachers can go through the entirety of K through 12 education without ever talking about slavery as an institution, even though it's thoroughly ingrained into just the history, just the basic facts of America's history.
My understanding, I don't see the banning of slavery being taught in
It's
Texas.
not the banning.
Yeah.
The issue is that it's no
'Cause
longer.
I know that bill.
It's
yeah.
no longer required.
I know
And
that bill, and I know it also states that you're not supposed to teach it in a way that causes mental anguish.
So it does not ban it. It doesn't ban the talking of the
Bro,
institution of slavery, but it
You just said it banned it. Am I tripping? Let me go back because I think she just said it was bad and now she's saying it's not bad. I'm gonna go back.
America and change it to should it be taught in America? Because it is. It is. There are teachers that are teaching this.
So there's a recent bill that was passed in Texas called Senate Bill 3, and it completely revamped Texas's curriculum standards and basically eliminated all requirements for teaching of history education in Texas that relate to diverse perspectives. So teachers can go through the entirety of K through 12 education without ever talking about slavery as an institution, even though it's thoroughly ingrained into just the history, just the basic facts of America's history.
My understanding, I don't see the banning of slavery being taught in
It's
Texas.
not the banning.
Yeah.
The issue is that it's no
'Cause
longer.
I know that bill.
It's
yeah.
no longer required.
I know
and there,
that.
Okay, she didn't say it was bad. I thought I was tripping, y'all, because I don't want to put words in her mouth that she didn't say. She said it was eliminated from being a requirement of being taught.
Bill, and I know it also states that you're not supposed to teach it in a way that causes mental anguish.
So it does not ban it. It doesn't ban the talking of the institution of slavery, but it does create a loophole for teachers to never touch on the topic at any point in a child's education. And that is something that is happening. And it's something that is happening to peers of mine. It is something that is happening predominantly in communities outside of, I guess, my home city of Dallas, but having traveled and having talked to students across the state of Texas, I can confidently say that there are teachers who are not teaching very key facts of American history because critical race theory conversations have so clouded the teaching of history as an entire whole.
And it's not often called CRT anymore. It's called diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's called all of these different names and labels because of how divisive of a thing that it is. And I think at the end of the day, the big thing here is that let's teach Black history. No one on the right is saying, do not teach Black history, do not teach slavery. If we forget those lessons of the past, we're bound to repeat them. But what we're also saying is that stop being vindictive towards white people for being white. No one alive today was a slave, and no one alive today owned slaves. And so for white children to sit in a classroom and be blamed for sins that they themselves did not commit is wrong. For Black people, for Black children to sit in a classroom and be told that because of the color of your skin, well, it doesn't matter how hard you try, you're really not going to go that far because the society hates you, and then you have all of these structural barriers preventing your success. That is also wrong. That is not lessons of hope. That is not lessons of opportunity, and I think that is what schools should be about. You can't create the next generation of leaders if they are never capable of seeing themselves as leaders, right?
And what he's saying, it has a lot of backing to it. If you're told students, or if you tell students that America is systemically racist, and you also teach students that white people inherently have privilege over other races, and then in the same breath teach facts about slavery, and you're doing all this simultaneously, that can be disastrous for a lot of students. And the reason I'm saying that is because students K through 12 are still children. They're still children. So you're telling this young student that, yeah, you are inherently a problem. And you're also telling the student that, yeah, your race inherently has privilege. And let's talk about an example of that. It's slavery, right? Let's talk about that example. I can see how that can be problematic. What I would say as a solution is, because I think critical race theory can still be studied, because anything can be studied. I don't even know how you can eliminate that in schools. I would say eliminate it in schools, but you have to completely revamp the culture behind some of these schools, because it's really not right. I will say the best thing you can do is just not teach any of it in K through 12. And the reason I say that is because when you get to college, you're allowed to study whatever you want. In society, if you have a phone, you're allowed to research these type of topics. So the best thing you can do to just avoid any conflict now is just avoid them and just not talk about them in schools. I wish it could be banned, but I don't even know how it could be banned.
And I think like that is what CRT, unfortunately, in some ways, it does to young children of color.
What CRT means to me is obviously really different from what it means to you. And when you were saying before, like kids are being anguished, I am not for kids feeling guilty about being born in the body they were born in. That's not what I taught.
What did you teach?
I mean, what did I teach? Well, for one thing, I taught about slavery. For another thing, I taught about like the ripple effects of slavery that we're still feeling today. In no way saying that people of color are less than or can't be, or no, not the opposite. Saying like people have persevered through things that I myself as a white person will never understand. To really make this.
So you did teach critical race theory. That is literally critical race theory. Critical race theory is the teaching that America is a systemically racist country. And when you imply that people today are facing things that you will never face, that is, maybe I don't have a good understanding. To me, that's teaching that America is systemically racist. That is literally critical race theory. And when you teach this as a white person, you are telling the other white people in this class that you're not saying it directly, but you're implying that I haven't faced it and you also haven't faced it, but your classmate has faced it. So they're oppressed by basically your existence. You have taught it. You're trying to dance around it and not admit it, but you taught it a little bit.
This micro, the way I see it is there is no reason that kids of a certain age, right, because it's different teaching to a 6-year-old and teaching to a 17-year-old or in college, shouldn't learn about the history of slavery, the history of redlining, the history of Italians being lynched in this country, et cetera, looking at the facts and looking at some of the horrible things that have happened so we can learn from it. That is a totally different conversation than when you've got instances like in Cupertino, California, where you have 7 and 8-year-olds who are being sat down and said, okay, time to do a privilege exercise.
That's what happened in
Let's
my-
write out, where you are on the power prism. Because that can create situations where students
that's
have warped
crazy.
views of themselves, especially if they're young. And I don't think it's appropriate because
I didn't even know that was happening in schools, because when I was in school, this type of stuff didn't happen, which is crazy because I was in school further up. I was in school back then. It's not really back then, but I was in school years ago, which is technically closer to slavery. Technically, because that's a big talking point a lot of the media likes to use. Slavery, the closer you are, the less privilege you have. I was in school further back then, but this is a topic, or this is a subject that's more popular now, which is insane to me. It should have been more popular back then, if anything, but it's bigger now than it was then.
of the emotional impact it can have on folks.
If people are actually being sat down being like, if you're white, you're an oppressor and you're bad, that is not okay. That is not CRT. That is not critical race theory, and that is not culturally responsive teaching.
So it's not necessarily being blatantly said, but it's being implied.
He said that's not CRT. I'm going to look up what CRT means. Critical race theory defined. Critical race theory is an interdisciplinary academic field focused on the relationships between social conceptions of race and ethnicity, social and political laws, and media. CRT also considers racism to be systemic in various laws and rules. So if you're teaching children that America is a systemically racist country, you are literally teaching CRT. And I'm not saying that from bias. That is the literal definition of it. What do you mean that's not CRT? You can't just change the definition when it suits you. Yes, it is CRT. Jesus.
Over and over again.
Okay, there is definitely a way to teach CRT without it putting anybody down. But it's like, hey, just so y'all know, if you're interested, there's different types of racism. There is the idea of racism as you treat someone differently because they're a certain color. And yeah, you could be racist to a white person if you don't like them for being white. Now, there's also systemic racism because we took a whole bunch of slaves from another country and brought them over here. But with that,
Yeah, that's CRT, man. I don't know if you're trying to paint yourself in a good light here, or I get what you're doing. You can teach a topic as a fact without punishing or without insulting anyone else. I think you can teach a controversial topic as a fact. The problem is, just by you speaking now, I can tell that you're biased towards one side or the other. And that's a problem. When you're biased towards one side. So I don't think you should be teaching this. I don't think you should be teaching this. I also don't think that this is appropriate coming from you to be taught to children. Maybe when they get to college or old enough to interpret things themselves, yeah, but it just seems kind of like a little bit of brainwashing when I hear you talk about it.
That said, right, there's different types of racism here, and you can expose yourself to different ones at different times, but you don't have to make anyone feel bad. You just say the statistics the way they are. You're not saying one person's good, one person's bad. You just go over the definitions.
How should we be teaching race?
Well, I don't think we should be teaching white privilege in the classroom.
But teaching about race, like if you're, designing your ideal, setting.
Yeah. I think
How do you think race should be
Is that because you think it doesn't exist, or because they can't handle it, or like
I think
what?
Again, when it comes to the privilege discussion, like that's a great conversation for you to have with your child. But I don't think that taxpayer-funded hatred should be something that we allow in our schools.
Okay, bro, real talk though, like brother to brother. Teaching white privilege does not inherently mean black people are less. Factually incorrect, right? So
what is white privilege?
White privilege is the idea of white people may have benefits that fall in a societal structure. Because they are white, they have advantages, not such as, for example, if you send out a resume and you make one name a white name and the other name the classic.
What's the white name?
The white name was John, for example, right?
I know Black John.
Okay, no, hear me out. Let me finish, okay? We did a study, I didn't do this study, but we did a study where basically it was sent out 2 different resumes, they were the exact same.
Okay.
Right? One was given a classic white name. The other was given the name Jamal.
Okay.
The white name got 2 times more callbacks.
And
right?
I disagree with what you're saying.
But the idea of white privilege, right? The idea that somebody that is white may have an advantage does not inherently mean you are teaching a black individual they cannot accomplish great things. That is completely separate. So we're talking about fake biological science and social science. We're not even in the same building at school right now.
Well, again,
in regards to these like audit studies about like what is a white name, it's not necessarily that the name itself is white. It's that the perceiver, the person that is reading the resumes, for some strange reason, feels like when they see a white name that they are on their team, or that there are positive stereotypes associated with people being white. That's what we're talking about when we talk about white privilege, is that, okay, if Oprah goes into a store, people might not assume that she can afford the things in that store because she's a black woman, even though she is Oprah. But if someone...
The problem that I have with this is that you're teaching subjectivity. You're not really teaching anything that can be proven in our day-to-day lives. And I get it. There are abstract case studies. There are case studies that may support what you're saying. The problem with this is that it cannot be proven. It can't be proven in the average person's life at all, if I'm being honest. And to me, that's an issue, especially if it's being taught in schools with other subjects such as history, which is stuff that's already happened, such as math, which is math, such as science, which is, all these other subjects that are core curriculum that you have to be vetted, that has already happened, that is not really much debate in it. You're trying to combine that with what you're saying, critical race theory, which is just subjectivity in society that may change, that may not change, that's specific to certain circumstances, that is based off of your own experiences. I don't understand why you'll want to teach that to children. I don't get it. I really don't, because it's subject to change. You can't prove any of it. And that's my problem. You cannot prove it. But anyways, I'm going to end this video here. If you have any suggestions, comment down below. It's Jojo, and I'll see you next time.